Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com.
Really past infrastructure? Did it happen? Wait, we're not quite done yet.
We're definitely not done.
I haven't seen a signing ceremony. Have you?
No, I haven't seen a signing ceremony, but Roads, bridges, public transit, and more.
So much happening this
weekend. So I guess you got to go on vacation more?
I guess so. Maybe we'll get that other leg done. All right, we're going to get to that in just a moment. First up, let's get back.
8 in a row for the S&P 500 index, and it's only had 2 down days in the past 19. Right now, the S&P, NASDAQ up at 29, also higher by 0.2%. Lots of reasons for the gains today. Corporate earnings, strong hiring data last week, and a COVID treatment breakthrough that is all bolstering optimism in the U.S. economy. Pfizer does say it plans to submit its COVID pill test findings to regulators as soon as possible. Last week, Pfizer said its COVID pill reduced hospitalizations and deaths in high-risk patients by 89%. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is Vice Dean at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Result in a very controlled clinical trial. So what's going to happen is the FDA will review it really carefully, and then if it is important thing to keep in mind is it does have to be given in the first few days of illness, and so that really means people need to get to care to know it exists.
Dr. Sharfstein with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP, and Bloomberg is surging 11%. AstraZeneca down 0.1%. Moderna shares up by 2.5%. Johnson & Johnson down 0.4%. 10-year yield right now 1.49%. Spot gold up 0.4%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.9%. 81.99 a barrel. Again, recapping, S&P up 7, up 0.1. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
$50 billion infrastructure bill, finally. So we're done, right, Tim?
Oh, totally done. Yeah, Emily Wilkins is definitely just taking a break, not doing anything.
On vacation in the
Caribbean. Yeah, she probably didn't work at all this week. She's joining us on the phone from Washington, D.C. Okay, Emily, we spent a lot of time over the weekend reading up on this, understanding it. Carol has a perfect question. What's next? Are we done?
Absolutely not. So if you remember, one of the big things that was a part of this debate was this 2-track process. It was that bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then it was the social welfare and tax bill, also known as reconciliation, also known as Build Back Better, many names, but the social welfare and tax, that's really what is in the package. And Democrats initially said that both needed to move at the of Democratic losses in Virginia and elsewhere, and also because there was a sense that something simply needed to get done. Democrats needed to notch a win for themselves and for the president. And so what happened was that around 11:30 on Friday night, they took the vote on that infrastructure bill, and then they also took a procedural vote on the other bill that sort of sets up the groundwork and the foundation. Even if the House doesn't vote on it until, say, 2 weeks from now, that's when we're expecting to get more details on what the bill spends and how much it raises. That's a key component where it's expected to be changed further by Senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. And then it has to come back to the House so the House can approve those Senate changes.
So initially, progressives, certainly in the Democratic Party, were holding off because they wanted to make sure that the social welfare and tax or give something away by signing off on the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure part of this. I guess what I'm wondering is, Emily,
leverage here in going forward on that infrastructure bill. And the reason they did that is because they did get a signed agreement from some key moderates who said, look, we do want to vote on this social welfare bill. We want this to pass, but we just need to see these scores about how much the bill is raising and spending. And we, the undersigned lawmakers, once we have for passage of this bill. Moderates also kept saying that they really wanted to make sure that the bill was going to pass. And at this point, you've seen Democrats negotiate so much of it that you have a top line number, you have a lot of ideas on what the provisions are going to be, even the things that are still unclear, like those state and local deductions, the SALT cap. We don't quite know what the end proposal is going to look like, but we know there's a proposal in the House and one in the Senate. Those are much more.
Okay.
And part of this was that at a certain point, progressives have lost some of what they wanted. Moderates have lost some of what they wanted. This is how negotiations work when your margins in Congress are so thin.
Do you think about it that way, or is it kind of a win for everybody?
I think this is definitely a win for President Biden. It's
Okay.
definitely a win for Democrats. For Republicans, it's really going to remove the ability for Republicans to fully attack Democrats on this package, knowing that so many of their own members voted for it. But for Republicans, we don't expect any of them to support us as we move into midterms next year.
Emily, 30 seconds. Speaking of midterms, when do we start to actually see this infrastructure bill go into effect? Like, when do Americans?
Construction season starts again, when all the orange traffic cones start getting out there. That's when you're really going to start seeing this bill go into effect. States have been planning.
Local reporter at Bloomberg Government on the phone from D.C. I ran into former Labor and Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, who we talked to at Milken's, and she said a lot of it's going to be discretionary and up to the federal government, and that a lot of states are. All right, let's get to world and national news. Back over to our 99.1 newsroom in the nation's capital, and Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. The Justice Department says it has arrested the Ukrainian perpetrator of a ransomware attack on the American IT company Kaseya. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman with details.
Yaroslav Osinski was nabbed by Polish police when he entered Poland from Ukraine. In addition, Yevgeny Polanin is still hiding out in Russia.
And hold them accountable. And we've got ways of disrupting those sheltering in places like Russia, as Polyanin discovered when he woke up and found 6.1 million that he'd extorted from his victim.
In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Former President Barack Obama is pleading with the nations attending the COP26 conference they must follow through on their promises regarding the planet.
We are nowhere represented. Most countries have failed to meet the action plans that they set 6 years ago.
Obama's comments came as conference leaders acknowledged today many passed the House Friday night and will soon be signed by President Biden. He told a White House briefing today every community in the U.S. will benefit. He said that by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
On YouTube, if you are.
It's been almost a week.
I know, since
the election.
I know, the New Jersey governor race.
Yeah.
And the Republican candidate.
All ballots to be tallied before deciding whether to concede or seek a recount. That's according to his campaign.
Technology errors resulted in voters casting about 70,000 provisional ballots that have yet to be counted. The campaign said 1,000 votes, according to the latest count that stand between them. And I guess if I was on maybe his side, I might do the same thing. Would you? I don't know. Is that considered close? I'm trying.
Less close than some other elections where all parties have conceded already.
Right.
So
Youngkin has a 2-point lead over McAuliffe.
That's exactly what I'm saying. 66,000 is actually a lot.
It is a lot. First of all, when you say that about how little voted, that shocks me and disappoints me. I was looking at some of the numbers at the polling places, and they're like, it was really quiet.
That's interesting. When I went, so I voted in my home area in Brooklyn.
Was it busy?
It was pretty busy. Yeah, I did.
It's very social, right?
It's very social.
Anyway, he's refusing to concede until all New Jersey votes are counted. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But, I mean, the election's been called.
The election's been called by the Associated Press, but that, he still needs to concede. And look, there's a precedent with this now with President Trump, right?
Exactly.
And that's the big difference, I think, today.
But we did have some really close races, which you can understand. But anyway, TikTok will wait until this is, I guess, finally called.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all continuing to move higher. We are looking at records today. The S&P is on its longest winning streak since 2017. Corporate earnings, strong hiring data, and a COVID 705 higher by 0.2%. The Dow's up 103, up 0.3%, while NASDAQ is up 39, higher by 0.3%. 10-year's down 11/30 seconds. 10-year yield 1.49%. Spot gold right now up 0.4%, 18.26 the ounce. And after the closing bell today, PayPal up now by 1.5%. Zynga also reporting after the bell, up 0.5. Virgin Galactic Holdings up by 1.5%. Right now, it is up by 6.7% ahead of earnings. Again, recapping, stocks at a record. S&P up 7, up 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. This is among our most read stories on the Bloomberg. It's also a Business Week story. It's about the real-life succession drama playing out, kind of rivaling the HBO series, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing that we're doing this on Monday after everyone had a chance to watch the most recent episode of Succession. Joining us now is Joel Weber, editor at Bloomberg Business Week. He's with us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Natalie Obiko-Pearson is Vancouver bureau chief with Bloomberg News. She joins us on the phone from Vancouver. There's a quote in this story, Joel, that really helped me understand as an American the size and scope of Rogers. It was from a profile in Toronto Life. You can't swing an old cord
when there are probably a few more corded telephones around. But yeah, this has unfolded over the past weeks and months. And if you're watching it closely, you just can't stop. The outcome was, we talked about it ahead of time, and we said, like, this is the chance to kind of, like, if you haven't been watching Succession, like, now's the time to tune in. So Natalie, talk to us about that backstory at Rogers and what transpired on Friday.
Sure. So, I mean, just to preface, if anybody ever calls Canada boring again after this, I want them to go read the story.
Well said.
Zion's argument that he is in control of this company and he has the ability to essentially pick its board. But it all started about communications. And this is one of the biggest publicly traded companies in Canada. He tried to do this, and it turned out that his family didn't support this. Much of the management at the company did not support this, so they fired back and they blocked his move. So then he went around and fires the board for firing him, for firing the CEO. I mean, our heads were just spinning, and for almost 2 weeks, no one knew who controlled one of the country's largest public companies, because Edward had his own hand-picked board that he said was in control. To an end on Friday, the judge said, she actually said, like, this is more like a Shakespearean drama, but it's actually a distraction. The legal question is very narrow. And Canada's provincial business laws say that he is allowed to go in and overhaul the board if he chooses. So his board stands.
Well, we were kidding before we got going. Tim and I were talking before we got on air and just saying we kind of need a whiteboard constantly to kind of figure out what's going on here. The thing is, it's a critical time, right? Because they're in the midst of a major acquisition.
It is. I mean, despite the entertainment value of this, that we are about to have they have proposed one of the biggest mergers in this country's history. Rogers is wanting to take out the CEO right before that transaction. This deal was going to come under the scrutiny of regulators and politicians anyway, because it's so massive, and it essentially will lock in what we call the big three telecom companies here. It will take out their biggest. Rivals have already been arguing that it doesn't have the ability to sort of carry out this transaction and manage such a huge company. And this sort of lends credence to those arguments.
So what does it mean for Canada as a whole? Because, Natalie, there's a part of the story that I thought was fascinating, which is there's already another one off the board, right? And what concerns do the Canadians have about that?
I think this story has actually been a real window into the key sectors of the economy are controlled by family dynasties, by state-protected behemoths. we have 5 banks that are a near oligopoly. And then, of course, the big 3 telecoms, Rogers Communications, TELUS, and BCE, that are about to lose the 4th biggest, Shaw. Power is concentrated into the hands of a few elite. And in this particular case, a member of that ruling elite has literally gone in and decided, if you disagree with me, and my own board. So, that's not the way public companies are supposed to work, or public markets are supposed to work.
Natalie, how's this story playing out in Canada beyond the business press?
It filtered over into general news as well, and you would sort of open up the newspapers every morning, and on the front page that would be the latest in the sagas. One really funny thing was initially sort of these hints filtered out that the CEO of Rogers communicated him through some sort of a phone call. Well, it turns out that the person who was supposed to replacement accidentally picked up a call from Natalie, so he pressed accept instead of decline. He opened the line for 21 minutes so that Natalie could listen. Line couldn't figure out the difference between accept and decline, was supposed to be taking over the company from him.
I think one of our colleagues a few weeks ago referred to this as a butt dial.
Yeah, that was my favorite too.
I think it was Scott DeVoe.
You cannot make that up.
All right, so Canada is not boring, Natalie. We'll give you that, hands down. Look forward to here at Bloomberg News on the phone from Vancouver, and of course, Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week, here in our Interactive Brokers studio. That is nuts. Don't you think the right minute's coming? All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business.
We move into the final hour of trading on this Monday, November 8th. We're looking at records once again. S&P edging higher for an 8th straight session. It's only had two down 17. Corporate earnings, strong hiring data, and a COVID treatment breakthrough, all part of the mix today, with the S&P up 9 right now, up 0.2%. 10-year yield 1.49%. 10 years down 12/32. seconds. Gold up $7.94 the ounce to $18.26. Spot gold up 0.4%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1% higher by 85 cents a barrel. 82.12 right now for WTI. So an update across the board. Records in addition to the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, also for the NASDAQ 100 index and the Russell 2000. So what about the market outlook? Emily Hill is a partner at Bowersock Capital Advisors.
The returns we've captured in the last year are a reversion to the mean. There's a question about being through the end of the year, simply because the momentum is unbelievable.
On Wednesday, the National Labor Relations Board will mail ballots to employees at 3 Starbucks coffee shops in and around Buffalo, New York. We'll be voting over the next 4 weeks on whether to establish the first ever unionized locations in Starbucks. Starbucks shares today, they are trading lower. Starbucks down now by 1.4%. And journalists at the New York Times Wirecutter unit plan to strike during the product review website's peak traffic period around Black Friday. New York Times shares down 1.8%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
But just off about 3%.
I was thinking about doing a poll on Twitter. Should I come to work, okay? Yes.
Wait, did Elon Musk get in your ear and
No,
suggest
I will
something?
abide by the results.
Should he basically sell 10% of his stake? He did it over the weekend. I have to say, I was listening to this over the weekend. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, you like your Twitter polls.
Dana Hall is with us. She's on the phone from our San Francisco bureau. Dana, what's he up to?
Okay, I'm going to sound very cynical, but he's now, because he is the world's richest person, he has a target on his back from politicians like Senator Ron Wyden, who think that there should be $1 billion some shares in the fourth quarter because he has options that are expiring and he's facing a huge tax bill. So the fact that he's musing a sale is not surprised. But to be clear, there's been no filing. I mean, it's just a Twitter poll. I mean, it's just like everyone is acting like this is a done deal. Like until there is a Form 4, it's not. It is just speculation. So, and I think he just wants cover from his fanboys that like if he does it, they're not going to freak out.
Investors are thinking it's a done deal. At least maybe earlier today they were. The Tesla shares are down.
Sort of all over the map. Like, I mean, obviously retail investors are a big part of the float, and some people are mad because years ago Elon said that his money was going to be the last, first in, last out. Other like he deserves it. Why not? Like, some people are excited that he could. Institutional investors are thinking about all of this because they've been very quiet today about it. They usually are pretty quiet. I mean, this could be a bid to like drive down the stock, pay his taxes before the end of the year, and then load back up. Like, I mean, so I mean, the one thing I will say is that, Musk has always maintained roughly 20%. He does not like to be diluted. So it's hard for me to imagine him, like, all of a sudden being like, okay, I'm just going to be happy now with, like, 10%. So,
It's interesting. It is so interesting. I guess when all is said and done, 58% said yes, they support it. 42% said no. When it comes to Tesla and Elon Musk, first of all, I do wonder about regulators too.
Hard to say because under the agreement with the Securities and Exchange Commission, he's supposed to get tweets about material information pre-approved by what we call the Twitter sitter, the designated securities counsel. However, like this is just a poll. This isn't like actually selling the stock. So like, did that require pre-approval or not? Does the SEC care? Like, I mean, is this the type of thing that the SEC is going to start? And part of it is because this also happened over the weekend, not during market hours.
I think you're right, though. Like institutional investors, I wonder what Vanguard feels, or BlackRock, or State Street.
More than 740%. This year, it's higher by close to 70%. We're talking all-time highs here for Tesla. Like, okay, maybe a little bit of good time to sell the company.
At an all-time. I mean, it's at an all-time high. Like, why not sell? I mean, he has to pay taxes regardless on his options that are expiring. So essentially solve world hunger. I mean, maybe he'll give all the money to SpaceX. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like he's really in Tesla and SpaceX stock. He sold most of his houses. I mean, so if he's got a tax bill, he's got to pay it somehow.
Okay, well, he's also where Musk is when it comes to being in the crosshairs of politicians in Washington and to what extent they actually have power to,
person on the planet. He's also a government contractor who has a national security clearance. I mean, SpaceX, his biggest customers are the U.S. military and NASA, so he needs them. And, you know, he's broken the mold of what it means to be a CEO for so long that, you know, I thought that tweet personally, I mean, it was, you know, for me, but the last I checked, the billionaire tax was not part of the Build Back Better plan. I thought it got axed. I mean, so I think there's still a desire by some members of Congress to enact a billionaire tax, but I thought that was out of the last draft version of the bill. So, yeah, he will be a target of politicians who think that billionaires need to pay their fair share, absolutely. And you're seeing, you know, not just Ron Wyden, but Elizabeth Warren and Robert Reich. I mean, there are plenty of people who feel like he should pay more in taxes. But I think his counter-argument would be, listen, like, I've generated thousands of jobs across my companies, and tons of people have also gotten wealthy from the,
Okay, guys, as you can see, position close on euro.
Numbers of employees.
Pretty
we made a profit.
Right, Dana, thanks so much. Dana Hall,
10 pips.
technology reporter at Bloomberg
Okay,
News from
1,000 pounds.
Let's get a check on the latest.
Good guys, well done. Good profit, decent profit. For you guys, for other people who want to get the strategy, you need to get it from our website, companyeye.co.uk. And let's stay safe. I will speak to you later.
Saying that 15th, Congress is out of session right now. They will pick up that bill.
Decided. The Texas border with Mexico is open for shoppers and tourists for the first time since the COVID pandemic began. Democratic Congressman border will translate into a good Christmas for retailers. Today, the U.S. lifted COVID-19 travel restrictions from Mexico and more than 30 other nations. Oh, Attorney General Merrick Garland, in making the announcement, says they're determined to catch bad actors.
The United States, together with our allies, will do everything in our power to identify the perpetrators of ransomware attacks, to bring them to justice, and to recover the funds they have stolen from the American people.
Again, Attorney General Merrick Garland. Global news 24 hours a day, on air, and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and...
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic here at New York headquarters of Bloomberg, and we're going to talk a little bit about Walmart.
You ready to get those groceries and stuff delivered autonomously? Sure. I'm not talking drones here.
No,
okay.
You're talking about vans just driving around?
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do this on, like, city streets. How do you do it where there's just...
we got to ask
We have electric
Emily
bikes. Regional Airport Boulevard in Bentonville, Arkansas, and it says how the company, Walmart's...
Trucks have begun pulling up there 12 times a day. They're full of online orders sourced from a warehouse 7 miles away. They carry everything from apparel to avocados, but what's most impressive is what they lack. That is a human driver.
So they're actually going from one place to the next.
Yeah.
And just no driver.
Right now. But it's a controlled environment.
Yeah. I guess they're programmed to take the most conservative route, not necessarily the most direct. For example, the machines I guess, and they can easily make that turn.
Yeah, and as Kyle points out, cargo makes for an easier lift than passengers, both technologically and economically. Demand, it's easier to model, schedule, and spread throughout the day than any tide of commuters who are wanting to get home in a rainstorm. The global research and consultancy Guidehouse expects automated vehicles will primarily be carrying cargo, not people, until at least the year 2027. We've seen Uber and, well, more so Uber, experiment with this in recent years with some actually tragic results. That, transported in a van. As a person, you're going to...
Where's the driver, says the Apple.
As a person, you're going to say, wait a second, I want a driver here.
So there's a couple of startups, right? I guess Cargo is one of them, Cruise LLC. So anyway, we're watching where a company like Walmart is investing in, and this is some of those companies.
and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellip. We begin with a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service U.S. 30-year inflation linking. Today's afternoon call, here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks in the green today with the Dow currently up 103 points. S&P's gained 7.5. NASDAQ rises by 40. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.5%. Gold is up 7 points. Bitcoin gains 4.4%. And among the main 11 S&P sectors, leaders were materials, energy, and tech. Utilities were under pressure. Leaders hired by an investor group for $26 a share in cash. In other news, Pepsi expects delivery of the first Tesla semis in Q4 and Facebook to use AMD chips in its data centers. And that news sent AMD surging to an all-time high. Wrapping things up, PayPal reports after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUA.
Really appreciate that update. So we talked about Tesla. That is certainly on our radar. So too is Berkshire Hathaway, because got an update on that company's business over the weekend. I'm just taking a look at shares of Berkshire. They're a little bit higher in today's session. But what's really impressive, Tim, is their mountain of cash just continues to grow.
Yeah, the company also, Warren Buffett signaling caution with Berkshire on a stock selling recent days about Warren Buffett and about what's been going on with Berkshire Hathaway. But what's the big takeaway from what you learned over the weekend with the company's most recent earnings report?
I mean, we saw his cash pile reach a record. It's $149.2 billion. And yet he still spent a lot of money on buybacks. He spent $7.6 billion buying back his own stock in the quarter. But when you really look at it, that didn't make much of a dent, and it's partially because not only is he not finding big acquisitions to really put that money to work, but he's also a net seller of stocks. I mean, we saw that, he's on a 4-quarter streak now of selling stocks, and that's actually a trend we haven't seen in data going back to 2008. Obviously, he's not dumping stocks. It's not like that. Just really signals that he's kind of stuck with a lot of money and not many places he wants to put it to work. And that could be good. Maybe he's steering clear of some high valuations, but
just about $28 billion. He could buy Ford. It's about $80 billion. He could even buy GM. It's about $87 billion. But it's not what he wants to do. What is the Berkshire Hathaway of today? We know it for its iconic names. We know, some of its kind of tried and true investments. In some ways, Warren Buffett better than most here at Bloomberg. He tends to be kind of old school, but he's also, what is Berkshire Hathaway today?
It's really an industrial giant with opportunities to have some stock market upside. I mean, you have, the underlying profit for the whole conglomerate was up 18% in the quarter. The railroad hit a record. The energy business actually hit the highest level we've seen in many years. We're starting to see them have to venture into different areas to actually try and find good deals and attractive options. I mean, we can see actually, recently, Berkshire had invested in Nubank, that Brazilian fintech, which is seeking to go public. And obviously, some of that I think is the influence of the deputies that are trying to say, okay, we need to start expanding the horizon, of Berkshire.
What do we know about how Warren Buffett feels about the economy right now?
So we didn't get too much of an update, but what we can do in these quarterly releases, since Buffett doesn't have an earnings call, what we can do is we can actually dig into how the company's doing. And, yes, the business is volumes, but a lot of the companies are facing higher prices. Inflation has been a real issue for the operations. And he warned in his earnings release that a lot of the companies are facing higher.
All right, Kat, since you know this company, you've covered it well. What was missing? What did you want to know more about?
Well, these new record figures, the record cash pile, and, a high number of buybacks, but still, no major options for them to deploy that cash. And I think investors would love to be able to get that perspective of, what is on the horizon for Berkshire. Are they a world? You'd think so, but I think obviously some of that would be something we want to know. Is Berkshire's phone still ringing these days?
A difficult place to deploy money because things are expensive right now, and Warren Buffett thinks that things are expensive right now?
Yeah, I think it's not huge net selling. Again, he's not dumping stocks, but he's kind of consistent with it. I think it shows, more of an impetus to sell than to buy, obviously. But I do think it is over $300 billion. So, while many investment managers would obviously love to work with those sums, it does restrict sort of Berkshire's some limits to being that big.
No Dogecoin or anything coming up yet?
No Dogecoin, but we are loving those fintech investments, obviously pushing some of the horizon.
All right. Always appreciate all that you report on this company and on the individual. Kat Chiglinski, finance reporter at Bloomberg News, covers Berkshire Hathaway, covers Warren Buffett, joining us on the phone from New York City. As we mentioned, Berkshire shares a little bit of movement in today's session.
Nice getting Doge in there, Carol.
Hey, I'd love to. Would you love to ask him about that? This is Bloomberg Radio.